Welcome, listeners. I'm so thrilled to have you here today. I have Dr. Lena Robertson, and I'm going to just be picking her brain. I'm so thankful that she's here. And I was actually, before we got on camera, just thanking her for going through med school because I've got a kiddo going through her residency and it is not easy. So, to all the doctors, thank you for all that you do, all that you put in to help people. But Dr. Lena is kind of a different kind of doctor now where she's a naturopath. She's going to talk about that a little bit, but she's really helping people with the aging process. And you say, how does that connect to divorce? I always want to share what I learn, and I am such a lover of learning. I can't wait to learn more from you about how to age better. And it's especially important to my listeners and to all those going through a gray divorce that we are feeling good at our best, especially if we're going through something really hard. So, Dr. Lena, thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me here.
So, if I understand correctly, you have a background with divorce. You have a story, and I always like to ask my guests to give their authentic story.
Right. So I'm actually a child of divorce. My parents divorced when I was 11. And that was definitely a very difficult experience to go through. I ended up going with my dad and he remarried. And so I kind of grew up with the dynamics of like having my mom somewhere, my dad somewhere. I didn't really go back and forth so much. I was mostly with my dad, but I did visit my mom. But, I had to accept a stepmom. That didn't always go so smoothly, though. Right now, we're like really great, great friends. She's my mom, my second mom, and
Yeah.
and she had kids before too. So like all of a sudden now I have all these other brothers and sisters, and so
A
that was
huge dynamic.
huge.
And, a big part of what I do is to help parents come up with a great co-parenting plan. I mean, it's so
Awesome.
important to me, and you've
Right.
lived it. You understand why parents have to work together and be in alignment. And I'm not
Mhm.
saying that doesn't mean that it always has to be 50-50. In your case, it
Right.
wasn't. But,
Mhm.
sadly, it's hard for children, and most of them really do carry some of the pain. If you can do it right, it can be resilience. And,
Right. Mhm.
so
Yeah, and the reason I bring up my background in growing up in that experience is because I feel like the experience, even though it was not perfect, really helped me when I went through my divorce. Just seeing how my parents were really hippie, and like they were like all about, oh, we all get along, and
well, that's kind of good.
yeah. So, my mom would come visit, stay at my parents' house, my stepmom and my dad, and they just would all be talking. So that's kind of how I grew up. And that's how how I was raised. And so I didn't comprehend so much like when you saw the families like with all the fighting and like,
Yeah.
although I have seen it, growing up, what my friends were going through, but my experience was very different. And yes, there was definitely times when I told my stepmom, "You're not my mom," and
Right.
like it was
That's
not
normal.
it's normal. But she was always very accepting of me, and and would stand up for me. And I remember overhearing her one day when someone was upset at me for something, and she didn't even know I was hearing her, but she was totally standing up for me. And I think that's what finally solidified that, like, okay, she's on my team.
Right.
And she never said anything about my mom that was, derogatory or
Yeah.
anything. And so I really appreciated that. So,
It's actually kind of giving me like tears in my eyes to hear you telling this story because your parents did it right. I
yeah.
have studied how children, thrive through a divorce or not. And
Mhm.
there's been lots of studies done. I've had a documentary film producer on who's had some films about it. And the one child out of all of them that she interviewed him and then she did it again in 10 years, was
Uh-huh.
the child who grew up like you, who his parents, even though their family looked kind of funky and different, they
Mhm.
were all part of the family. He knew he was loved. And so that's such a huge message. That is the best thing you can do. So kudos to your parents. And
Yeah.
I don't feel like there's a lot of them out there. I'm hoping that we can change it. So I don't know with your divorce, do you have children?
I do. I have 3 children.
And how
And
did that go?
yeah, I mean, it's one thing seeing your parents go through it. It's a whole nother thing going through it yourself. Again, it wasn't perfect, my divorce, but like, I feel like we have tried to do the same. Um, when I think there was definitely we did a little different than my parents, like, because like I was the stay-at-home mom, raising 3 children while my ex-husband worked all the time and he was the breadwinner, right? And so there was this time period of about 5 years where we kind of were just cohabitating and legally married still, but just not
Yeah.
together, just because of financial reasons,
Yeah.
right? It's like, okay. But I was kind of at that point where like we got married so young. I was 19, he was 21. We knew each other for 3 months, 3 months.
Wow.
So the fact that we managed to make it work for 17 years, and 5 of those years we were just cohabitating, but like we actually made it work for 17 years was pretty good, I say.
I would agree with you. Now tell me, when did medical school come in?
Yeah, so that kind of came in when the whole thing of like, well, we're going to get the divorce or not, and I was thinking, oh my lord, like I've literally been the stay-at-home mom for I don't even remember how many years. I think my youngest was like 2 at the time and she's 18, so this was like a while ago, obviously, but she was about 2 and my oldest son was maybe 12, 13. And I was like, okay, so how is this going to work? Like, I have no job experience. Like, all these years I've spent just raising kids and I
Yeah.
loved it. I was there. When you think about paying for childcare, right? And you have
Yeah.
2 children, it's like, it's better to just stay at home
I know.
sometimes,
That's
right?
the choice a lot of people make.
Right.
Yes.
And I got to see them take their first steps, like,
Mhm.
all those things. I was there. So I'm very grateful for that. But then that time came when, like, okay, we've like grown apart. Like, we were
Mhm.
married so young, we didn't even know who we were. And then we just grew apart and we fought a little bit, not terribly, but we were fighting a little bit. And we just realized, this isn't working the way it is. And I wanted to pursue like education and like that's kind of where the divorce thing also happened was like, I felt as my children were growing up, like I wanted more than just
Mhm.
being the stay-at-home mom.
Yep.
And like we were not in alignment on that one so much. So
Okay.
that kind of helped spur that too. Um, but then also the fact that, okay, now I need to start making some money for myself because if we're getting a divorce, I'm not going to be supported anymore. So at
Right.
first, I was like, what is the fastest thing I can do? And it was definitely not naturopathic medical school. I was
No, I
like,
was gonna say, honey, you took like the marathon route.
I know. I was like, okay, nursing,
Yeah.
you can do like 2 to 4 years of school and you get out and, instant job access typically. So that's actually where I started. And I was like taking night classes because, I was still the stay at home mom. And I was like taking
Right.
the night classes or weekend classes or online classes at first, like 1 or 2 classes here and there. So it was like a long process. I think, some people can do the whole 8 years of medical school in 8 years. I took it to 10 years because of all that dynamics.
That is
Um,
so amazing. I didn't even know this about you, and now I'm like even in more awe. I love it.
Thank you. Yeah, I was definitely determined at that point. Like, okay, I need to do something. But like within the first quarter of going back to school, and I think I was like 26
Yeah.
at this point. Like, okay, going back to school at 26, and um, I was like, okay, so nursing, you do your prerequisites. So I was taking the biology and, all those like anatomy, physiology, all
Yeah.
those prerequisites. And then when I first moved to the Seattle area, there's the Bastyr University, which is one of the, well-known naturopathic medical schools. And at 18, actually, before I had kids, I was like, wow, this looks so cool. I really want to do it. But my mind was like, at 18, like, there's no way. No
Right.
way I'm doing this 10 years of school. So got married, had kids, and then while I was doing the doing the biology, one of my professors actually worked at Bastyr, and he was like, "Why are you going into nursing? Do the thing you've always wanted to do." So So then that kind of spurred me into thinking like, okay, well, maybe I could make this work, you
Yeah.
know? But it was definitely like one of those, whoa, like, okay, now I'm literally signing on for 10 years of school.
That
And
that is crazy amazing. And it's
yeah.
interesting. It's so interesting because I keep thinking of parallels with my life. I stayed home with my kids and then I
Uh-huh,
went back to law school. Not the same as med school, but kind of
uh-huh,
around the same time you did. And it
right.
was kind of a joy to me to have
Uh-huh,
my mind immersed in something other than the being home
right. I
and
actually
yet
did enjoy it.
yeah, still being so thankful and grateful that I had that time. So
Mhm.
that's amazing, Dr. So now tell me, I understand it's been, have you had your clinic for about 5 years or am I wrong?
Yeah, so it kind of evolved my clinic. I when I graduated, I instantly set up a brick and mortar clinic in Bellingham, um, and this was 2018, so like almost 5 years.
Yep.
Um, then I had that open for a year, and then my same clinic, I just moved to a new location and was
Uh-huh.
renting out of somebody else's clinic because I realized I didn't need such a big place.
Right,
So
right.
I kind of downsized to a smaller building, which was really nice. And then COVID hit, right? so,
Hmm.
so I was like, okay, time to pivot. And
Yeah.
I kind of always wanted to do the whole online thing. My brick and mortar clinic, I was seeing clients mostly for age related things, like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, osteoporosis, hormone imbalances, things like that, right?
Hmm.
And I kind of seem to attract that demographic. And I actually really love working with that. So it was perfect for me. But then I was like, well, I really want to go online. But, it's like you have a clinic, you've invested all
Right.
this time and money into that. So it's kind of like, oh my gosh, this is going to be, and I'm not a tech person. So I was like, how is that actually going to work? I'm going to have to do all these forms.
Yeah.
So then COVID hit and it kind of forced me
Yeah.
to actually buckle down and do it. Um, but I went through 10 years of medical school, not business school. so it's like, okay, here I am trying to learn how to do the whole
Yeah.
business thing, right? So I actually joined a mentorship program. It's called The Wealthy Woman. It's with Dr. Michelle Rogers. She's a naturopathic doctor,
Uh-huh.
and she kind of went into the online space, her mentorship program was amazing for me
Yeah.
just because it was just such a comprehensive program. Like, okay, this is how you build your course. This is how you do the social media.
Yeah.
This
That's
is
awesome.
yeah. So I spent 6 months doing that. And then during those 6 months, building out my program for my
Hmm.
online business. And yeah, then pivoted to the online space like a year and a half ago. And I'm loving it because I'm kind
Yeah.
of a homebody. I really like
Yeah.
working from
I
home.
hear you. I mean,
So
I'm right there. I'm in my barn. I mean, I
yeah,
love, there's nothing better than that. So there are some blessings. And you
yeah.
are a courageous woman to be starting your own clinic, then switching and pivoting to online. So I love that. And I'm so thankful that I'm getting to know you. So now I want to use your brain and I want to squeeze some knowledge because I myself go through issues, but I want to learn about as I age, right? So I'm already through menopause, but some of my
Right.
listeners aren't, or they're just starting to get there. I want
Mhm.
to learn about reclaiming your metabolism, your hormones, your mind, and your energy. And what I'm thinking of right now here today is metabolism. And I've
Right.
done some tests. I've done the Dutch test. I do intermittent fasting. I truly eat extremely healthy. And I'm telling you, my body is right here where it is and it will not budge. And it's so interesting because I just went on a trip with our youngest daughter for spring break.
Mhm.
And it was like all inclusive. I don't normally drink alcohol. I had
Right.
some drinks like sugary pina coladas. I ate as all day long. And I
Mhm.
came home and I weighed the same amount that I did. So I'm like, what are you doing, body?
Right. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I always was like really a really thin person. Like I think when I had my first kids, I was 100 pounds. Like I was
Ooh, yeah.
really tiny, like probably anorexic if you really think
Oh,
about it. But yeah. Then once I hit like thankfully during school, like I gained the typical 30 that you gain
right.
like in medical school.
Right.
So I was way healthier then, but in some ways
Right.
not because the stress and the lack of sleep. But Yeah, once I hit 40, it was like, what's happened,
Because I work out and I eat
Right,
well and nothing's budging. And it's not, I'm really taking it as an opportunity to learn to love myself as I am. And I
right,
always want my listeners to do that, to
right,
just love who you are right now. You're not going to be happier when you lose 5 pounds. You're going to be the
exactly.
same happy. But it's interesting to me. And you do sometimes feel like, what, why am I banging my head against the wall? Not that I like to work out because it makes me feel good. And then
Mhm.
so it's kind of metabolism. And then I think the hormones. So I've
For
done
sure.
the Dutch test. I hardly have any hormones. So,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah,
I, and so I think too, like I'm not building muscle even though I'm lifting. And
right.
so it's not really looking like I'm lifting, even though I am. Still makes
Mhm.
me feel good, makes my heart healthy. But I'm
Right.
so curious, tell me more about your program and things that we can do.
Yeah. So like, I love the Dutch test. It's actually one of the tests that I do run. I'm
Yep.
a huge fan of testing and not guessing, like so many
Yep.
times, it's like, oh, it could be this, it could be that, or, you run some basic blood work. But, the thing with blood work, especially with hormones, is that you're just getting one glimpse in time.
Yeah.
Like, okay, at this moment, this is what it is, and it's just a number, right?
Right.
But your hormones are fluctuating throughout the day, especially if you're a woman. Men do too, but not quite, with the cycle, right?
Right.
And then they're being converted from one hormone to the other, right? So you're not seeing any of that in blood work,
Right.
right? So that's why I really love the Dutch Plus test, because you are seeing all that. You're seeing, for example, with estrogen, there's the precursor hormones like pregnenolone gets converted to DHEA, and then then there's women have testosterone too, right?
Yeah.
And
Or
then
we'd like to.
right? And then there's the progesterone, which can
Yep.
get converted to estrogen, and testosterone can get converted to estrogen. And then you have your three types of estrogen, right? And then there's the detox pathways that they could go down, right? There's the 2-OH or the 2-hydroxy, the 4-hydroxy, and the 16-hydroxy, right? One of them being more protective, one of them being more toxic, and then one of them being more dominant.
So
And
you're kind of like you're talking over my head because you're so
okay.
smart. But this is what I want to say too is I think you have a freebie that you're going to
Right.
give my audience that has a huge list of all kinds of tests. Because I'm just
Right.
thinking people might be going, wait, what's the Dutch test? Where can I get it?
Yeah.
So they can see what they need and what's happening and what tests they would need. Is that something that they can do through you? Like, can you?
For sure.
Okay.
Yes, they can do it through me. My program includes the Dutch Plus, just because I do like to look at the hormones. Because, like I said, you can see how they're being converted. Because one can, one can be a little bit more toxic than the other. And then if your estrogen or your hormones aren't being removed from your body, that can cause problems with your metabolism. Stress obviously can cause problems
Mhm.
with metabolism. What you're eating, and then this is where I'm going to go into a whole nother test, is like I really like using a functional genomics test with
I
my
don't know
clients.
about that. Okay.
Right. So your Dutch test is looking at your hormones and
Mhm.
your cortisol. So there's the stress piece right there. It looks at your melatonin, so that's really nice too because of the
Mhm.
sleep. Because lack of sleep can also cause issues with your metabolism. Thyroid problems can cause
Yeah.
issues with their metabolism, right there. So
I
there's so
have a
many different
thyroid
things,
issue too. Yeah.
right, that can cause problems. And that's why I really like to test, because you're actually seeing the data, the scientific data behind it,
Mhm.
right? Um, but a functional genomics test. So the Dutch Plus is looking at, and blood work, and the most of the tests out there is looking at what your body's doing right now, right?
Right.
And this is based off of like your years, your experience, what you've been exposed to, your stress, your eating,
Right.
your lifestyle. So many different things contribute, but a little bit of it is genetics too, right?
Right.
So the genetic test, a functional genomics test, is not really showing you what's happening right now. It's not saying, okay, you have this right now. It's more looking at the blueprint,
Oh.
of the house. Like, okay, this is what how your body works. This doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have these things. It just means you're predisposed to it, right?
Mhm.
So, um, it just means like two people who are doing the same thing. If one person's predisposed to something, they may get it, whereas the other person who's doing the exact same thing doesn't.
So, and that's what I love about functional medicine is that you're looking at the individual. It's not just
Right.
let's put this on and see if, this works for most people, this might work for you.
Right.
But like for my listeners who maybe haven't met you yet or had a functional assessment, and if they're having, like, we'll say like me, where I'm through menopause, are there things you can do? I mean, I've tried to study foods you can eat to help certain hormones. Like I think sweet potatoes, I've heard help one of them. I can't remember which one. So I kind of tried to switch up. Are there things that you can do to help your hormones be there and be a little more balanced?
Yeah, for sure. And well, number one, my favorite is just sleep, like sleep and stress. Like,
Yeah.
like those are like the foundations to health, right? If you're not getting proper sleep, if you're like super stressed out, it's gonna just put everything off whack. So those are my like, okay, these are the two things that I think are like foundational. Obviously, working with your diet. And this is where the functional genomics test can be really helpful because like some people lose a lot of weight on like a keto diet, right?
Right.
Then there's a Mediterranean diet, and it's like, well, which diet is best for me? And a functional genomics test will actually show you, based on how your body is metabolizing things, what diet is best for you. And that's why I do like to incorporate, because you are getting a very personalized dietary approach to things.
I want to take that test because
Yeah.
it's so funny because I did a program and it was a great program because it was about your mindset and everything. But everybody kind of did the keto thing where you had vegetables too, but I didn't lose a pound. And then the fasting, there were some long fasts. So I'm really curious. But here's the good thing. My blood work's good. Like things did improve because of what I was doing, but I didn't see a difference in my weight. And so I'm so curious as to why. Or maybe, as my coach always said, maybe you're just where you need to be.
This is yourself.
This is
right. There's that too, right? Your body's just like, okay, this is what I want.
This is where I want you to be. But I would be really interested in taking that test. How do I do that? Go to your website?
Well, I haven't put a link on my website to it. I do include the test in my program. I do 6 functional labs in my program, and that's one of them. I actually do have a link that I can provide you, like when we're done talking, that actually links, like if you want to just do it yourself, because it is one of those tests that you can just order yourself as well. So,
will I be able to understand it if I do?
It's pretty self-explanatory. They do. So they give, like when I order it, I get like the practitioner report, which is like over 100 and something pages.
Right.
But for clients, they do give them, they send it through email. They have like a portal, and you can go on and they'll actually like break it down pretty self-explanatory. They even have an audio recording of someone explaining it. So it's really nice.
I would love that. And we can put that in our show notes too. So we're going to put that freebie about what tests you can get. Okay. So sleep is important. Stress, keeping that lower, that can be hard sometimes. And then it's kind of like when your progesterone is low, it kind of automatically makes you a little more anxious. So then it's really a matter of trying to take care of your head. Any tips on how to get more sleep?
How to get more sleep? Well, I mean, there's the whole, I don't know if I like to call it sleep hygiene, but it's like making sure your room is, a cool temperature. They say about 65 degrees is really good.
Yeah.
I like to wind down at night. Like if you've been like exercising a lot or in the evening or just really stressed out, just having a nice warm cup of tea, which can maybe backfire if you have to wake up at night to go to the bathroom, but it's still, I like to do it. Just have my like nice chamomile tea or some other just calming tea, just sit there, read a book, dim the lights, just get yourself kind of in that zone. Sometimes taking a warm bath can be helpful. Sometimes it can stimulate you. So it kind of just depends on the person. Not having a TV in the room is super helpful. And then just blue light is like one of the biggest things actually.
Yeah.
So, turning off your screens, like, 2 hours before you go to bed. I know that's so hard, like screens on your cell phone, your
Well,
computer.
my book is on my screen,
Yeah.
you know,
So
so
like getting like blue blockers,
yep.
the blue blocking glasses. And then also there's apps that you can put on your computer or your phone that block the blue light. Let me see which one. I think I have one called Flux.
Okay, that's good to know. I did not realize. So I could put that on my iPad so that
Right.
when I read. Well,
Right.
and I will say one thing that I've been working on to do is I've always had trouble sleeping, not
Mhm.
just like as I went through menopause, since I was a
Right.
little girl. And finally, I just decided it's okay. I don't get as worked up about it. I
Mhm.
try to take a nap if I
Yeah.
can.
Yeah. That's
You can't always, but if I'm really tired, I go, "It's okay. You're gonna get," and then I don't suffer as much,
right.
knowing and helps keep the stress down. So that's another piece. Like it's important, but I don't want to go overboard and be all freaked out if I'm not.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Another thing to think about is, going back to the blue light, just light in general is super important for your circadian rhythm. So,
Yeah.
like the blue light can affect your sleep, but how you set yourself up for the day also has a big impact. So, like getting the natural light in your eyes first thing in the morning.
Mhm.
So, first thing in the morning, go outside. Doesn't have to be long. Just like get the light in your eyes. If you live in a place like me, getting one of those lights, those sun lamps.
Where do you live again?
Bellingham, Washington, the
Okay.
city of rain. So, well, not
Yes. Well,
Seattle,
I'm
right?
telling you, here in Minnesota and Wisconsin, I'm on the border. I mean, it's pouring rain right now. It
Right.
isn't easy, but I think I so love that, and I've heard that, and I feel like, I've got these animals in my little hobby farm that I need to get up with and take care of, and
Uh-huh.
sometimes I have to do it in the dark, depending on the time of year, and that probably doesn't serve me well because then I miss out on that light. But I do work towards that, and it
Uh-huh.
feels like in the summer I sleep so much better because you're out.
Right.
It's so awesome. So, we just can do the best that we can do. And I am looking at the time, and I can't believe how fast it's gone.
Right.
I may want to have you back on after I take that test.
Yeah, the genetic test actually will talks about your sleep, like because it's not just like vitamin D affects your sleep.
Yeah.
Um, how your detoxing can affect your sleep. Your eating habits can affect your sleep. What was the other one? There is actually a gene called the clock gene that is your like sleep regulating gene, and if that's like mine is suboptimal. Like when I did my genetic test, I'm like, no wonder I have such problem with sleep.
So when you found that out, what could you do to change it?
Well, it's working with like just knowing that. Okay, so like, okay, I know that my body is like this, like genetically
Yeah.
from a foundational level, I have problems with sleep. So just knowing that I can work like with the, making sure the blue light. So I have to just work extra hard,
Okay.
getting that light, making sure I'm taking that time because it
And
doesn't come
just
naturally.
I always feel like the clarification, the knowledge is just like a little bit of relief. Well, now that makes sense.
That
No wonder
explains
I'm
it.
no
Yeah.
wonder I don't sleep. Well, all
Yep.
right. Well, Dr. Lena, I'm so thankful for your time and being here. And as you know, as I wrap up my episodes, I have what I call the saddle up segment. And you've
Right.
given us so many great tips already. Do you have something else that my listeners could do right now, like one thing that could help them have a better life?
Yeah. So I was going to say sleep, but since we've already talked so much about sleep, I'm going to switch that. I'm going to talk about just like the stress a little bit, just breathing. It's like free. It's like,
Yeah.
like just take that time. And especially because, your show is also about divorce. It's like, when you're going through a divorce, like no matter how great it is or terrible it is, it's going to be a little bit stressful. So
Mhm.
just working with that. And sometimes just taking that time to like just breathe and, just 5 seconds in, 6 seconds out, just like resetting your nervous system, right? You have the sympathetic, which is the fight or flight, and you
Yep.
have the parasympathetic, the rest and digest, right? And things are going to go way better if you're in the rest and digest state, and that's what you do when you're breathing, right?
Yep. And I'm so thankful that you said that, because what's really interesting is I think that people are starting to know this,
Mhm.
because a lot of my guests talk about that in the Settle Up
Oh,
segment about
awesome.
the breathing. And I try to talk about that with my clients before we get in to a
Mhm.
heated mediation. You can do it anywhere. Just feel your breath in your stomach, or,
Right,
be aware of it. Get back into using that. I call it the sage or the prodigy brain. Get
right,
back to that place so that you can make good decisions. And you're going to have those feelings. They're going to, pop up. You're going through something hard, but if you can
right,
work on that, it's awesome. So that's a tip that's going to help people through stressful circumstances. And I love
right,
it. So thank you so much. And how can people get a hold of you? We'll have it in the show notes, but if people
right.
want to find you, where should they look?
Well, I mean, I'm on social media. It's
Yeah.
just Dr. Dot, so Dr. Dot Lena Robertson. I also have my website. If you go to my website, you can also get the links to like my freebie, my functional lab freebie, what you should test and why, and that's www.drlenarobertson.com without the dot after the doctor.
All right. All right.
Yeah,
Well, we'll have that in the show notes. I think it sounds pretty easy to find now that
yeah, it's
we
pretty easy.
yeah.
All
Well,
right.
wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I
Yeah,
so
you're
appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you.